Welcome to Base Talk with Hagen and Hayes. Today's topic is the travails of travel. So, Susan, tell me about your problems traveling with a base.
Well, David, my problems traveling with the base actually reminds me of something you were just talking about before we started to record. A lot of times when I travel with the base, I'm fortunate enough to be traveling with the Boston Symphony or the Boston Pops, and they do handle the base for us. You put it in a trunk, and they ship it and they see it off, and then you just see it at the hall. However, it's not always that easy, is it?
No, it isn't. Uh, yeah, I enjoy traveling with a base, but it is stressful.
Yeah.
Often the difficult thing is getting from the car park to the airport with the
Yes.
flight case, because you
Yes.
can't really take it on one of the buses. So
Right.
I have to drop Sarah at the airport with the base, and I have to go and find the car park. Then I have to get a bus back. Then we have to go into the airport. Then we have to check in. And you can see the looks on the girls' faces, at the desks. They can see this big base, and they haven't checked one in for, I don't know, 4 years, and they've forgotten how to do it. And they're just thinking, please, please don't come to me. Don't always coming to me. And then, but they're always really lovely and helpful. But then often you have to take it underneath, for security. So I get the base out, and
Right.
they check there's nothing in there. Often they do checks as well in the flight case.
Yeah.
And then you close the case up, and then you're free. And then you're
Right.
worried about what's happening to your base. Uh,
Exactly.
it's really really stressful traveling with a base, I have to say.
Yeah.
But touch wood, it's only gone wrong once for me. How about
Okay.
you?
Well, I've been really fortunate in that when I've traveled with the base and dealing with it myself, yeah, knock on wood, nothing has gone wrong. The hardest thing is
Mm,
getting it, convincing the people at the desk to let it on the plane. Um,
yeah.
I remember being in Texas and having to explain that it was a bass fiddle because
Mhm.
they didn't know what a double bass was or a string bass. And so the guy said, "Oh, bass fiddle. Yeah, one of my friends plays that in our folk band." And I was like, "Okay, yes, it's that." Someone else asked if it was a cello. And I thought, do I say it's a cello and have it go on as listed as a cello? And then if something happens and they're like, "But you said it was a cello." And I was like, it's a little bigger than a cello. And like, okay, it's fine. But like, there's that dilemma of what do you call it? Because sometimes, depending on the airline here in the States, they're listed differently as to you call it, and then what the upcharge is.
I once flew to Belfast with a base, and I got to the check-in, and the lady said, I'll just phone someone to come and get the bass. And she said, oh, there's a cello here to be collected. And I said, no, it's not cello, the bass. She said, oh, no, don't tell them it's a bass. They don't know what a bass is, but they do
Mm,
know what a cello is, and they know a cello is valuable. So they'll really look
perfect.
after it. And I thought, wow, that's really good advice. So if they
That
call
is
it
good
a cello,
advice.
go with it.
It's a cello. And that's
Mm.
it. People ask walking down the street, is that a cello? And I always say, close, it's a bass, but I think I'll just say yes.
I think at Stansted Airport, I think there's a an X-ray, and you
Mm,
have to put the base in the flight case, and it goes through the X-ray, and
okay.
then it goes down a chute.
Oh, yes.
But I think it's a conveyor belt rather than a chute,
Okay.
but it does go down,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always so terrified of just seeing the base there.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes you're sitting waiting to get on the plane, and you can see your plane, and you can see all the luggage coming, and you can see your
Yes.
base on one
And
of
then you
the
feel it come into the plane.
yeah. And I don't look because
I don't
I
look.
don't want to know. I don't.
No.
I'm trusting that everybody knows their job and everything
Right.
will be fine. And it's been fine apart from once. So
Yeah.
I think I've been very lucky, really.
The very first time I flew with my base, I had my dad come with me. Actually, a lot of the times that I have my dad come with me, just have a second set of hands
Mm.
in case things became unwieldy and, a suitcase and a base and. So he came with me and we're sitting on the plane and they're loading the luggage and I felt the plane just dip down like whoomp. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Please tell me that wasn't my base." And he said, "Okay, it wasn't your base." I said, "Are you lying?" And he said, "Oh, like a rug." And Oh, the whole flight, it was like a 6 hour flight. My stomach was in knots. And
Mm,
I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to toss my cookies. This is just awful. And I expected to land and to open the base trunk and to have it be in like 5,000 pieces. And it was absolutely fine. And I thought,
yeah,
that's why the trunks have the padding and the cushion and the airbags and all that.
yeah. Mm,
But oh, it's not a good feeling. So now I don't look and I try not to pay attention to when the plane makes that, identifiable dip down, that's when they toss the base in. One of the things for me that I like to make sure, and I make a list for this because I'm kind of a list person, the supplies that I need to bring,
mm.
right? It's not just my base and my bow, and I always make sure I have my end pin because that's one of my middle of the night fears. But, my rosin and my tuner and my rags, and do I need to bring a rock stop or an anchor in case I'm playing somewhere that has a slippery floor? Although I do have an end pin that has a carbide tip, which is like, well,
Mm,
basically it'll stab into anything, but I don't want to stab into like a beautiful church
mm.
floor or something
Yes.
like that. So I do try to bring things, but I make a list. I don't know if you do this too. I make a list so that I don't forget my base supplies, basically.
I think I don't make a list because I always keep everything together. So I
Yeah,
always have everything all the time. I've started taking two bows with me now.
I do too.
I never used to. I was always presumed everything was going to be okay. And
Right.
I think it's just since lockdown, I've just started taking two bows. I'm just a little bit more cautious because one
Yeah.
thing I always say to my students is, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Right.
And I just think, right, yeah. So I do take two bows now.
Yeah.
I think it's the only thing I've changed. We
I
were once flying with I flew with Corrado Canonici, Italian bass player. We were playing in Ancona in northern Italy, and we flew and we took two bases on the same flight, and it was amazing. I think it was something like $20 each way. They didn't charge us for the base. It was
Oh, nice.
amazing. And we got to Ancona, a tiny little airport, and so we were standing there waiting for someone to bring out the bases, and they didn't. They put them on the carousel,
Oh,
and so the things came out of the carousel. And when you pick up the base, there's a lot of weight there, and you
yes.
pick it up, and it just goes whoosh. And if there's anyone standing to your side,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got to hit them in no
Yes.
uncertain terms. And we had two bases, and it was a very tiny carousel. And if we didn't get them quickly enough, it would have gone back round again. So we had
Right.
to, it's so stressful. Always, always.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing is I think every time I've done it, there is a level of stress that comes
Mhm.
with it that it's not really my favorite feeling in the world.
It's
But,
also knowing where to take the base and where
yes.
they're going to leave it when you get there,
Yes.
because it's never where you expect it to be.
No, no.
And
And
sometimes they just put it at the side of the by a wall or something, and they walk away,
right.
and you
They
have
walk
to know
away.
where the base is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and some airports will have like a very organized here's where the oversized
Mm.
luggage is and you go and you see surfboards and golf clubs and all kinds of, more athletic things and then there's a base plopped in the middle of it all. But some places you just have no clue where it's going to end up.
There
And
used to
that's,
be something where you had to, I think it was just 32 kilos or something like that. We had to, I think that was the maximum. And I would always say, so I think it's only about 28 kilos, knowing full well it was
yeah.
about 35.
Right.
And I got away with it, I think, so many times. And then just occasionally they would say, well, there's some scales over there. Could you go and weigh it?
I
Oh,
hate
I
when they
don't need
do
to do
that.
that. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I remember the first time I flew, I was still in college, and my teacher said,
Mm,
just tell them it's 90 pounds, tell them
yes,
it's a cello, and keep it on the far side of the room when you go to check in so that
yes.
they don't see it up close and they don't know how big it really is. And I remember thinking, that's a lot of lying. I don't know if I can actually do that without like my whole face twitching. And so I tried it and they said, okay, great, but we're going to weigh it anyway. And I was like, oh, dear God. And I think they charged me $150 extra.
Mm,
But on the way home, I was in Texas and it was the bass fiddle. And they were like, oh, my best friend plays bass fiddle. So he let me on for free. And so I thought, okay, well, then it evens out to being not that bad for the round trip.
yeah,
But I think sometimes it just depends on the agent that you get,
yeah. It
their
is. It
understanding of
is.
the rules and their kindness.
Yeah, exactly. Years ago,
Yeah.
I took some of my students to Copenhagen.
Mm.
I was working with Mette Hanskov in Denmark, and there'd been a fire at one of the, I think the car parks in the airport, so part of it was closed. And
Okay.
so we managed to miss our, oh, the students couldn't get there. So I waited and missed the flight. So Sarah
Mm.
went and I put the bass on the flight with her.
Yeah.
So, and it was a bass case which didn't have wheels. So you had
Oh,
to pick it up and put it on a trolley and then
yes.
bring the trolley back. So balance it.
Oh,
So you could see in front of the flight case.
yes, yes. I bet
And
she loved that.
she did, and she was struggling to do that. And a man came to help her, and
Okay.
he said, "Is this your bass?" And she said, "No," and it's my husband's. And he said, "Do you know what I would do? I would divorce him." And I thought that's the best advice she's ever been given. So
And yet she didn't take it, which is a
she
good thing.
didn't. She didn't. She was very long suffering, I have to say. But it is so nice just occasionally, when you fly, you don't have a base. I always feel
Right.
I've forgotten something, or I've
Oh,
lost
yeah.
something, or I've left something behind. So
Yep.
it's really nice. But it is nice to fly without a base, I have to say.
It is. There have been a lot of times when I've flown places and I'm going somewhere to play, but there's
Mm,
a base there and it's a good base and I know it's
mm,
a reliable situation. When I would go out to the Utah Symphony to sub with them, there were
mm,
people there that would say, "Oh, don't bring your bass, just come use one of ours." And one of the women there had this beautiful old Italian instrument, and she'd be like, "I'll let you use my Italian bass for the weeks that you're
mm.
here." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And one of the other guys had a bass, an RV. I have two RVs, and so he was like, "Use my RV. It's just like yours. There's no
Yes.
adjustments needed." And I was like, "Oh, well,
Mm,
that's convenient," which is a nice situation when I know that I can, utilize that. And then when I travel and it's not actually music related, I'm like a vacation or something, I'm checking in the back seat of the car, like, where is all my stuff? I just have a suitcase. But that brings me to another point. Sometimes I'll opt to drive, even if it's quite a distance,
mm,
just to not have the stress of flying. So I basically, my rule of thumb is if it's east of the Mississippi River, I'll drive, whether it's going down south or heading west.
mm,
Uh, I'd rather take 2 days or 3 days and drive somewhere if I have to. It's usually less expensive, honestly,
mm.
than the flight and the potential overcharge for the base and a car rental when you get there and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'll just drive. It's fine.
Mm.
I love drive. I actually love driving. When I when I turned 8, it was my birthday, and I just started crying. And my mom's thinking, "Oh God, what's wrong with this kid?" And she's like, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Well, I'm 8." And she's like, "Yeah." And she's thinking I was like having some like old age crisis at age 8. I said, "Well, I can't drive until I'm 16. That's like a whole other 8 years. I'm only halfway there. I can't stand the wait," because I just couldn't wait to drive. But I still love driving.
Mm.
And so if I've got to drive somewhere, I don't mind doing that. And it's sometimes fun to see parts of the
Mm.
country that I haven't been to. It's really neat.
I agree. I enjoy driving. I did some concerts and workshops in Scotland. We live in Somerset, which is quite south,
Yeah.
and I was up in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Perth, I think. And Sarah couldn't come with me, so I drove.
Yep.
And I can't remember, it's 8 hours of driving, which I know for you is nothing. It's quite a
Yeah.
long way for us. But I
Sure.
had in the olden days, I had a CD player in my car,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, I was so happy with that. And I had the ring cycle, and going up one side of Britain and down the other side, I got through all, I think it's 21 CDs.
Oh, wow.
So I listened to the entire ring cycle.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, it was really fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And it's also nice to have your own car when you arrive.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's
I was,
definitely a convenience.
I was working with May Halliburton, and she's a freelance bass player in Scotland, teacher. She's lovely.
Yeah.
I've known her for
She's
many,
so
many
sweet. I
years.
love her.
And I was staying in her apartment, and we'd done a workshop, and she said, just follow me. And so I was following her car. And then I think I was listening to the ring cycle. And the next thing, and I knew she had a red car. And the next thing I knew, I was following this red car. and I'd got my sat nav on, and it was taking me in a different direction. And it took me about 3 miles to work out it wasn't me. I was following somebody else. I don't know where I ended up in Edinburgh. I had to phone her because I think I had the key to get into her apartment or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
I had to phone. I'm so sorry, mate. I'm so sorry. I've got to try and get back to you now. But because of sat nav, at least it's easy, isn't it?
That
You
is
just put the
such, yeah, that's such an
rather we just
improvement.
put the postcode in, it takes us back. But it's so
Right.
funny. I was listening. I was loving the ring cycle, and I just lost concentration. She said she saw me driving past her. She saw this Volvo going past, and she's, I'm sure
Oh,
that's David, and it was.
that is so funny. I did that once as a kid in a store. I was with my mom and we were shopping and she was wearing, like a tan raincoat and I followed the tan raincoat and she stopped and then I found another tan raincoat thinking it was my mom and following her. And then after a while I looked up and I saw it wasn't my mom and I just started crying. I was like, or maybe I screamed. I don't even remember. I made some weird sound and the woman was like, "Oh my God, who are you?" And I was like, "Where's my mother?" And so that's when I realized if you follow someone, you need more than just the color.
Exactly, exactly. So I
Oh,
think I've flown to, I don't know, maybe about 20 countries with a bass.
mm.
Because if you play solo repertoire, you need to know what bass you're going to be playing on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a bass with four strings.
Right.
You're trying to play Botticini on a
No, you can't do
orchestral
that.
bass. No, it's I like to know what I'm playing.
Right.
But it does add to the stress factor, I have to
Sure.
say.
It does. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. What is one of the easiest places that you've flown in and out of?
I think most of them, I think the worst, if I'm honest, is America. Sorry.
I believe it. No, no. We
With
have a lot of challenges with
yeah, with
flights.
America, often the airlines get you twice. Once
Hmm.
because it's too big, and once
Yep.
because it's too heavy. So you pay
Yep.
twice.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but with British Airways is usually, if I can, I'll go with British Airways because they have
Yeah.
a really good policy for bases, and I think on
That's
their
good.
website it does specify that they
Yeah.
carry bases.
Yeah.
Uh, and in the olden
We,
days, EasyJet and Ryanair, which is small budget
yeah, yeah.
airlines, they would take bases, and then they started adding. You had to pay so much per kilo, and then it started getting really expensive. Um,
Yep. Yep.
so I think most of the airlines, I have to say, have been really good.
That's
Um,
good.
I don't think I can't think of any of them being bad, and also the people you deal with, the ladies at the desks, are really helpful. Um,
That's good.
we were once at Heathrow, and there's always a line queuing up to go
Sure.
to
Yeah.
check in, and we were right at the back of this long snaking queue, and someone from the airline came and took us right to the front of the queue,
Oh,
um,
nice.
just to get rid of us. I think it was mostly
Yeah,
easier.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great though. I'll
So
take it.
just occasionally you do get
Yeah.
really fantastic service when
That's
you
nice.
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I've noticed in the States it really varies from airline to airline.
mm,
Some people just love Southwest Air. They said they
mm,
get, great treatment with it. I think I used to fly Delta a lot and then after a while their policies changed and
mm,
I go online now and I check the most current cost for a base. And then
yes.
I print it out
Mm,
and I bring that to the check in counter. And I keep it in my pocket. I don't show it to them at first, just in case they're going to give me a better deal than it says on their website. I'm not going to say, oh no, let me pay more. But if they're going to charge me more than what it says, then I'll pull that out and I'll say, oh, well, this is what your website says. And the other thing is, in America, sometimes they'll try to say, oh, you can't take that on the plane, even as checked luggage. But
yes.
we have the American Federation of Musicians
Mm,
has gone to Congress and had a letter written up that says, yes, you are allowed to check a musical instrument. And so it lists them and it's got all sorts of details. And so I also keep that with me just in case.
mm,
I find that the agents at the check-in counter, they all seem to have different information. And you can get someone who's nice and knowledgeable. You can get someone who's kind of grumpy and not knowledgeable, or a mixture of any of those. And it kind of just depends on
Mm,
who you get. So I'm always of the camp of go prepared with as much information as you need to have with you, but don't show it to them first. Let them, kind of, just in case they're going to be extra nice to you. Because I've been waved through without being charged a fee at all. And then there was a time when they tried to charge me, like, I think it was almost triple what their website said. And I
right.
very politely said,
Mm,
"Ooh, I think that might be more than what your
mm,
website says. Here, I printed it out." And, I don't want to fight with anyone, and I don't want to be, that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So you don't want to be rude or
mm,
pushy in like an aggressive way. So I try to be polite about it. And then if it doesn't work, I say, well, is there someone like a manager that I could speak with? Because I
mm.
think I really am going to need some help with this. And not in the, I've heard people say, I need to talk to your manager. I'm like, ooh, that's not going to make anybody like you. So I do think delivery has something to do with it too.
I think I've
But
been very lucky because all the check-in people have been fantastic.
that's
But I
good.
try and go with the attitude of they're doing their job, I'm doing mine.
Yeah.
Let's try and make this work together. Um,
Yep.
and I have more knowledge about this than they do because they don't check in
Right.
bases every
Right.
week of the year. So it's
Yeah.
quite rare they do it. Um,
Yeah.
so I try and be helpful if sometimes they need information. Sometimes they'll phone a supervisor for more
Yep.
information. But
Yep.
they're really usually very helpful.
That's
Um,
good.
and I think sometimes it's nice for them to have something else to do rather than just checking in ordinary luggage. It's
Oh,
something a bit
right.
more interesting.
I love making the little joke and saying, "See, you're gonna get to go home with a new story tonight." Guess what I checked today, Um, but yeah, and that's the thing. They are just trying to do their job, and they may not have ever seen a base before. So you have to
Mhm.
be willing to work with them. You're right. It's a good
It's
way to
just a
put
look
it.
of horror on their face when they see you.
Oh yeah, every
They,
time,
yeah,
every
it's so
time.
so funny. And I always
The
apologize. I say I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
The only time I think they don't look horrified, um, they look exhausted when there's like an audition or
Mm,
a convention in a town and they're getting boatloads of bass
yes.
players coming
Yeah.
through. And by the end of it all, they're like, oh God, another one. Oh, I just want a vacation. You see that look on their faces, and I say, bet you've seen a lot of these this week. But yeah, and I think it can be nerve-wracking to fly, but I think if you stay organized, stay calm, and just be like your attitude of just willing to work with whoever is at the ticket counter, it works. And you hear horror stories of, oh, my base was damaged, my base was broken, my base was lost. But if you think about how many instruments fly,
Yes.
you
Mm.
know, it's not, you just don't want it to happen to you. No, what was your one bad
That
time?
was we flew to Spain. I was working with Simon Garcia, and
Hmm.
I think we arrived late at night, and I picked up the bass and I think we were collected and went to the airport to the hotel, and I just put the bass in the storage.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at it because I usually
Ah,
get the bass out and look. I didn't.
right.
So I went down the next morning and opened the case, and the neck had come out of the bass,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
I kept closing the case and then opening it.
Hoping it would be different.
Exactly. And sadly it wasn't. Sadly it wasn't. And it just,
Oh,
oh, I couldn't believe it. But fortunately, Diego Zecca had quite a few bases.
oh,
Uh,
sure.
so I was able to go and borrow one of his.
Oh,
And
good.
so I was able to play. But it's not the same. It's really not
No,
the same.
no. And when you're playing solo stuff, like you said, you
Mm.
really need to feel very comfortable getting all over the fingerboard. And
Well, it's also, it's a D neck, it's an E flat neck. Where's the F
right?
sharp?
Yeah.
It's all the
Yeah.
same. They make a difference at the size of the shoulders. Um,
Hmm.
you know,
And
it,
even like the
mm,
tone, how do I
mm,
use the bow on this bass? It
yes.
takes
Mm,
adjusting to deal with that sort of thing.
mm,
Um, yeah, it's a tough thing. In America, they say, and this is good for you to
mm,
know when you get here in April,
mm.
which I'm so excited about. Check it at the airport, because if anything goes wrong, they need to know right then for insurance purposes. And if you leave the airport, they're going to think that it happened after you left the airport.
Mm,
They'll try to be like, "Oh, we're not responsible." So you check
yeah.
it right there at, when you get it, and
Mm,
it's much better. It's, just God forbid. And again, knock on wood. And most
mm,
of the time, things do come through okay.
mm.
But yeah, I think being early also helps when you get to the airport to check in. Have you found that?
Completely, yeah. With
Yeah.
a base, always get there a good couple
Yes.
of hours early and be
Yeah.
the first in the queue to check in.
Right.
Um, because an ordinary person might take 2 or 3 minutes to check in. We're
Hmm.
going to be 10, could be 15 minutes.
Right.
Um,
Right. And
so
you don't
if
want
you're
to feel
exactly,
stressed for
yeah,
time, and you don't want
yeah.
the agent to rush it, and then, the luggage handlers come and get in there. Oh, we've got to get to the plane quickly. That's when mistakes happen, I think, a lot of times.
And usually with customs and things, and also security checks, many,
Right.
many times I've had to go to underneath the airport to
Yep.
where the things are stored and take the base out
Yeah. It's
and things.
better when they let you take it out too.
Exactly, because I, like you, we know
You know what
how
to
to take
do.
it out safely and how to put it back
Yeah.
safely. And yeah.
There was a time right after 9/11, here in the States. They Once they took it, you couldn't go anywhere,
Mhm.
beyond the,
Mhm.
the little red line.
Yes.
And people's instruments, people were opening them and putting them back wrong and all that sort of stuff. And the owners of the instruments were begging, please let me come and help. And sometimes you'd get nice people that would say, okay, we'll check it up here,
Mhm.
because you're not allowed downstairs, or
Yes.
whatever. But I've heard mixed reports, but it seems like a lot of places are a lot more flexible now,
Mhm.
letting musicians stay with their instrument for the security check.
But the secret really is get a job in an orchestra.
It is because they do
Honestly,
it all for you.
yeah, you just get on the plane and you have
Yeah,
a few glasses of wine and you get off the other
right.
end. You
I'll
go to a
tell you.
hotel, have a nice dinner, and the
Yeah,
next morning your bass is waiting for you in the concert hall.
totally. In fact, I just was in Japan with the Boston Pops in October, and so you have to let the bass out of your possession a couple days early.
Hmm,
But our crew
hmm,
brought it all from Boston to Chicago on a truck. Then they had it all go through security checks. They palletize it, they wrap it. It was, several pallets because it was all the basses and cellos, actually almost all the instruments. And they palletized it and wrapped it. And then they flew from Chicago to Tokyo. And then they took it off the plane. Our guys took it off the plane and they brought it to the hall, and it's just sitting there in the hall. And I tell you, I'm the nerd that got there early to make sure. I want to make sure my bass is fine, and if it needs any love, I'll have time. So, they were the orchestra said, all right, so the buses leave to get to the venue an hour before the rehearsal. And I was like, that's not going to happen. So I said to the bass section, we were staying in Tokyo, the concert was in Tokyo. Yes, Tokyo's big, but there's a wonderful train system.
yes.
So I said to my colleagues in the bass section, as principal, I didn't want them to think I was being bossy.
Hmm,
But I said to them, I'm going to go early just to check on my bass. If anyone wants to come with me, you're welcome to.
hmm,
It's a very easy 10-minute train ride. I said, if you're going earlier or later or want to do your own thing, that's totally fine. I just want to offer the opportunity. I think the whole section actually ended up meandering over together, all but one.
hmm.
And we went like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours earlier, just in case. And it was nice to be together because if someone's
Yes.
sound post had fallen or bridge had fallen or something was wonky, we could help each other. But all the bases came through fine. I think part of it is because our guys literally were our crew handled them. And I thought, this is cushy.
You realized.
Yes, I did. I did. We were so fortunate. But I think, for me, making a checklist
Mhm.
helps ease the potential worry of, waking up at 3 in the morning thinking, oh, did I pack this? Or, oh, I better not forget to bring that. So for list makers, make a list. For those of you that aren't list makers, just pack everything up slowly enough so that you're not rushing through it.
Mm.
Doing it early, getting to the airport early, all of that. But David, you're a testament to how smoothly it can go. you
I
know?
think that's because the people are so nice at the airports on the whole. I think we're
Yeah.
very lucky. And I
Yeah.
think if you go with it with the right attitude, because I
Definitely.
think they probably have a difficult job and they're dealing with lots of difficult people who are stressed.
Yes. I think a
Um,
lot of people who travel are a little bit on the grumpy, stressed
mm,
side. You
and I
see it
think
in the airports.
we don't have to be that. That's the nice thing is we can go and have a joke with them, and it's a really
Right.
nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I say, I think I can't remember anybody who's been unpleasant. They've been so lovely and
That's so
helpful every
nice.
time.
I think there's something, I don't know, when they see a base, if they once they get past the oh my god, what is this? I do think that they're sort of like, oh, this is interesting. And if you're nice
Mm,
and personable and not grumpy towards them, they want to work with you,
mm,
and I think that attitude that we have as the passengers can
mm,
help. If you walk up and you're kind of all ready for a fight, that's not
mm.
going to go well. But yeah, I don't think, I mean, I've had a couple people that were, I'm going to say, very Bostonian in demeanor, like a little bit gruff seeming. They weren't
Yes.
mean, they weren't grumpy. There's just sometimes this Boston way of,
Mm,
what do you call that? You know, but they're not being mean. It's just the way they talk. And I
you're
can
right.
say it because I am a Bostonian. So I think this is interesting, and it's a fun topic, and I think it can be helpful for people to just know, stay calm, smile, be
Mm,
polite,
yeah.
and it should work out.
Because
So
they do want to help you. They do want you to
they
get
do.
to your destination
Right.
safely and look after your instrument. So it's
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this was a good topic, David, I think. Thank you, everybody, for listening to yet another episode in season 2 of Bass Talk with Hagen and Hayes. Like and subscribe, and thank you to our sponsors, Grace Gallery. There's a link to their website on my website, gracegallerydesigns.net. And I hope everyone stays safe and travels well. Take care.
Bye.